Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our Ccap webinar for today. I am Jovita at the partnership, and along with Madison Wicks, we'll be running the behind-the-scene technology for today's webinar. Just a few quick technical notes before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to you via the partnership's website over the next few days. Please note also that everyone has been muted, but you should be able to hear us out of your computer speakers or if you've connected via phone. If you lose audio at any time during the presentation, please click the Communicate tab in the upper left-hand corner of your screen and select Audio Broadcast to reboot your audio. If you continue to have issues, you can also call in and using a teleconference number located at the bottom of your confirmation email. If you have any technical questions, feel free to send them through the chat. And if you have general questions for the presenters today, please make sure that you select all panelists before typing your question and entering it through the chat. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mitzi and to Jim.
Thank you, Jovita. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Skills Portfolio webinar. I am happy to be here today with you as we progress through the next step of the Ccap program. During this session, Jim is going to talk to you about the Executive Skills Portfolio. He will guide you through each step of this process. Just a reminder, the Executive Skills Portfolio deadline is February 17th, 2021. For your reference, the final Ccap webinar on the Ccap exam guidance will be on March 9th at 1 p.m. On that note, I want to introduce you to Jim Lopresti for our presentation of the Executive Skills Portfolio. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitzi, and hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar in our series, delving into the deep dive, as it were, into the requirements for Ccap. Today, as Mitzi pointed out, we are going to take a look at the Executive Skills Portfolio and its requirements. And to begin with, understand that during the course of this, as I'm doing the presentation, I will be watching the chat window and hoping to address your questions as we go along, and I'll stop at certain points to see what kind of questions are in the chat window, and I'll turn to Madison to see if there's any that I missed. So please, if you do have questions, type them in the chat window, okay? The Executive Skills Portfolio has two sections to it. It's a sample of the work that you do. As a reminder, the candidate data form, which many of you have attended that webinar last month, is your opportunity to document your experience. The Executive Skills Portfolio is an opportunity for you to chronicle your skills, specifically in using and presenting a sample of work that shows how you've applied management functions and leadership skills and how you've incorporated the vision and values of community action in your work setting. Now, that work sample may be any kind of program or project or task or work that you have done that will fulfill the kinds of requirements that you'll see emerge as we go through this presentation. In addition to a work sample, a documentation of that program or project or task, you are asked to write 4 essays in which you relate your work to the body of knowledge outlined. Now, it's not just expected in the portfolio that you will send a sample of your work, but that you have the capacity to talk about that work and to talk about that work insofar as it relates to community action at a level expected of a certified community action professional. That's why those essays. It is evaluated and scored by a panel of Ccap commissioners and trained Ccap volunteers. You can earn up to 500 points towards a 700 total you need between your candidate data form and your executive skills portfolio in order to take the Ccap examination. And the due date is the third Wednesday of February. That means if you're hoping to qualify to take the Ccap exam in June of 2021, your candidate data form will have to have been submitted by the third Wednesday of January, as you would note if you've seen the CDF webinar or you go back to review it. And then the executive skills portfolio is due by the third Wednesday of February. That would be February 17th, 2021. And between the two of them, a combined score of 700, and on each of them separately, a score of 300. Now, the ESP, this work sample itself, must showcase your own work as a part of a team or group effort of some kind. But it has to be clear what you did in some kind of a leadership role in that project or that program or that task. And the work that you described that you did may not have come to conclusion more than 3 years before you became a candidate. That is to say, it may have begun before that, but you are still working on that project at least not more than farther back from the year of your enrollment than 3 years previous. That executive skills portfolio must demonstrate your use of traditional management functions, planning, organizing, directing, and evaluating. So you want to think as you look over the many things you have done in your professional experience, in those activities you've been involved, which one is the one you want to showcase where you are somehow involved in planning and organizing, directing and evaluating some kind of a work or program or project. We're going to get into much more detail on that in just a couple of minutes. And in a document that's attached to the work sample, you must provide the following information. One, what was the goal or the purpose of this work that you've undertaken? What were you trying to accomplish? What was the role that you had in producing that work? If there was a budget for the work, and if it's applicable, it must be submitted. It's not necessarily presumed that any project or task that's submitted for a work sample necessarily would have a budget attached to it other than what would be your budget for your responsibility in your agency. So unless it's a budget related to that work, it's not needed. But if there is one, it needs to be submitted. And then any documents that come from the work that show results, like maybe a report, a final report, or some kind of article that describes your successful project. We're going to review that again, refresh this information about how the portfolio submission is structured again at the end of the webinar. We'll get back to it. The 4 essays, in fact, are in essence kind of the heart of the project because the essays are your way of talking to your evaluators about the sample that you send. It's your way of relating what you have showcased in that work sample to the body of knowledge outline for community action, particularly in the body of knowledge outline, Section B, which is on the vision and values of community action. Section C, which is on traditional management functions, and Section D, which is on positive leadership positive leadership. And it also expects you, the essay section, to relate your work to the partnership standards of excellence. So that's to say that whatever the project you're talking about will relate somehow to the standards of excellence. We'll get to each of those, management, leadership, vision and values, and standards of excellence, as we look at each of those 4 essays and their requirements. This next underlined point on the slide is crucial. It's one of the most frequently problematic sections of an executive skills portfolios because sometimes candidates forget that they must refer to specific pages in your work sample when you are making some kind of a claim in each of those essays. That is your evidence. If you do not, when you're talking about in your essay, any of those particular topic areas, do not show evidence in your essay back to the work sample, you will lose a significant number of points. Please remember that. We'll get back to it because some parts of the essay actually give you a chart to do that in. Okay, let's look at each of those essays one at a time. I'm checking over the chat box before I do it to see if I don't see any questions yet concerning that general introduction. If you see any, Madison, let me know. Interrupt me. Okay. Let's take a look at then the first requirements for the first essay. Each of the essays asks for you to succinctly get your points across. It's not a matter of just throwing a lot of information at your evaluators and hoping they'll pick out the points you're trying to make. It's important to be succinct. In each of these essays, it's a 750-word maximum. That's not long. The first essay is on traditional management functions, again, referencing specific pages in your work sample that are evidence of the points that you're going to make. Explain how the work that you're submitting in your sample shows that you understand and have applied traditional management functions in the specific areas of planning, organizing, directing, and evaluating. That is right from Section C of the Community Action Body of Knowledge outline. Now, this year, in the ESP guide that is given to you on the partnership website, and we'll take a look at how you link to that a little bit later when we get to practical details of your submission on this webinar. But it gives the guide gives you some assistance about what might be involved in things that you might consider when you think about planning. Have you been involved in defining goals, determining resources needed to achieve targets, using tools like the Community Action Plan or ROMA or other appropriate methods, assessing lessons from historical evidence? Now, what you see on the screen is taken verbatim from the guidelines that are on the Community Action Partnerships website on the Ccap page, and we're going to look again at where that's located in a couple moments. So that gives you some assistance to help you think about the project you might choose. Actually, that leads to the point when it's more important to be thinking about what project you choose will best relate to these essays that you write. Think about the essays first, what you're asked to write about, And then think about what kind of work you've done that you can document in some way, perhaps with a series of emails that show the progress of the work in your work sample, a series of reports in your work sample, etc. Think about how these questions help you consider what kind of a project or task to think about. So here we're talking about the essay on management functions. Planning is one. The next one is organizing. And some of the things that might be gathering resources, generating support, working with the board or staff. Again, these are just suggestions to help you think about each of these. Directing might include such things as giving guidance or overseeing performance or delegating or making decisions or effectively communicating. And evaluating might include measuring performance, might include your ROMA contribution, an evaluation that goes beyond collection of data and engages in conclusions that improve results in your community. Now, when you choose a work sample, it's most likely that some of your work is going to involve more of one of these four functions than some of the others. That's okay. That's expected. But do as much as you can to relate to each of those functions in your essays. So that's the first of the essays on those traditional management functions, okay? We're going to take a look now at what's in the second essay, which is a bit more detailed and involved, and this has been very significantly revised for the 2021 Executive Skills Portfolio. So if by any chance you're using a guideline from previous years, they are out of date. You need to use the guidelines that are for the 2021 Executive Skills Portfolio. So now let's take a look at essay question number 2. The next thing you want to think about before you choose a work sample. And again, by referencing specific pages in your work sample, you're asked to articulate how your work on that project or program or task has in some way, note what is put in quotes here, influenced a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. I'll take to the next slide. I've repeated that phrase. By the way, I just saw a question come up in the chat window. I'll get back to that question in just a few moments to the person that submitted it. Promises. Leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal is a direct quote from a text by Peter Northouse. You see the reference there. Peter Northouse's text, Leadership Theory and Practice, is arguably by far the most frequently used comprehensive review of leadership theories used in leadership training programs around the world. And that phrase, leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal, is his distillation of what every leadership theory is based on. That's why it's used. Candidates are expected now to be familiar with two specific chapters in a Northouse text with that quote in mind. We're going to look at those two chapters and what they are on the next slide. Those two chapters are the first part of a three-part expectation in this essay on leadership. First, your first task on the essay on leadership is to clearly base your response either on a skills-focused approach, and or you can combine it with or do it separately, a situational-focused approach. They are both described in detail in the Northouse chapters. This is not a complex read. It is not a long read, but it is a quality read. So that means it's going to be a requirement or an expectation that candidates get a hold of that text by Peter Northouse. We're going to run ahead a little bit. You can be sure that leadership questions in the exam are likely as well to refer to this same text. I've gotten ahead of myself. We'll get at that a little bit later when we talk about the exam in a subsequent webinar. So, for example, the skills-focused approach pays attention to things like required skills of knowledge, required or technical, I might say, skills around human relationships, skills that are conceptual skills, problem solving, the kinds of skills that you find that you needed to access as a leader in that particular program or task or whatever example you are using of a work. What kind of skills as a leader were you called upon to exercise? Or maybe instead it's more situational. Maybe your essay could be focused on that. For example, situational focus, which you'd find in Chapter 5, where Northouse summarizes that approach to leadership, pays attention to how much you support or direct. For example, you might completely delegate a task, or you might find that you need to coach somebody in a task, or you might find that you support someone in a task, or you might find that the situation requires that you're very directive. I live in South Florida. We just came through a hurricane. Well, it missed us. But our leadership really needed to be very directive during that, not pulling together committees and waiting to hear about their best suggestion. Leadership required decisions and control. That's saying the situation may have directed what kind of a leadership approach is appropriate. The commission specifically requires a candidate to look at what kind of leadership skills or situation relate to the work sample that you are submitting. It made it more targeted this year. In addition, to make it more specifically related to community action, your leadership, the commission asks you to look at the section of the body of knowledge outline, section D, that is about positive leadership, specifically in community action. There are 5 sections of D in the body of knowledge outline: D1, D2, D3, D4, and D5. D1 is about fundamental skills. That's covered by what you just saw in referencing that text by Peter Northouse. Now you are asked to relate that work sample to the specific matters related to community action. So the second task then is to choose one and only one item out of the 9 items that are listed, and we'll see it in the next slide, under the body of knowledge outline D2 or D3 that best correlates to your leadership role in the project or the program or the task that comprises your work sample. Again, there's a reason to look at these questions before you consider what sample you're going to choose. Now, so in this essay, you're going to explain why you made that specific choice. from the body knowledge outline to showcase your leadership in this project. And of course, you need to cite the pages in your work sample that illustrate that explanation. Now let's take a look. What is in D2 and D3 in the body of knowledge outline? There are 9 possible headings. You need to choose one. Don't think if you choose 3 or 3, you're going to get a better score. That's not going to happen. You have to choose one. And to think about which one is best. Let me give an example. Let's say maybe I'm the public relations or communications or community relations specialist, or that's my responsibility in my agency. And maybe my agency wants me to lead a better effort to advocate for giving a better voice to marginalized community, even within our communities. Let's say that we've not been doing a good job of raising up racial equity questions, and we want to do something in the community to connect with the community, to give a better voice, not just in our programs in our agency, but in the community as a whole. And that's my job, to pull together a team and work on that, because I'm responsible for community relations. So I look at, among those 9, let's see, thinking strategically, maybe creating a shared victim, I'll build it. You know what? The best thing that I can have a most robust explanation to, as I look at that, is section D3 on communication, because that's really what I did best in this project. It was a robust program of communication, and I can really make a strong argument about that. I'm choosing that one. Of course, I'm making all of that up, but you see what I'm getting at? You look at that and consider which one can I make the best argument for. You can probably make an argument for a lot of them. Pick one of them. Okay? Well, that's from section D2 or D3. Now you're going to be asked for the third task, do the same thing for the 14 items that are listed under the body of knowledge outline under D4 and D5. It's the exact same task. Why did you make that choice? And cite the pages in your work sample. So let's see. What's in D4 and D5? There they are. D4 is ethical considerations for community action leadership. I'm not sure I see one in there. I mean, maybe it's honest communication, because that's really what I do. Well, that implies something. Honest communication sounds more like persons who are being transparent about what's going on in the agency. I don't think that's mine. Let me see what's in D5 for our program. Oh my, yes. I could pick one of those. Community action values becomes real through responsible leadership. Which one do I think I can make? I can make a good argument for all of those. How about, I get it, assure maximum feasible participation of the poor. Maximum. The whole low-income community, and we're going to go past racial barriers. So I think I can make my best argument there. Again, point out, pick one from D2 or D3. Pick one from D4 and D5. Pick the one that you think you can make the best argument for your leadership and relate it back to your work sample. Okay? That's a look at essay question 2. Before I go to essay question 3, I want to look back. Someone asked a question in the chat window, and I want to respect that. The question is, does the essay have to only be in one of these areas, or can the work sample span across more than these functions? That was back to the slides we looked at on the 4 management functions. Well, actually, the expectation is that your work sample should touch on all 4 of those functions: planning. So you're not just going to be doing planning. You're going to be organizing. You're going to be directing the project and evaluating the project. So you want to make sure that whatever particular work sample you choose, and you want to demonstrate your management functions, that you can demonstrate in it some of each of them. though there might be a larger focus on one more than others. It's anticipated when you submitted a work sample or a portfolio, in some areas you're going to be weaker, in some areas you're going to be stronger. But showcase your best in whatever you do. Okay? That's the only question I see in the chat window. Any questions on section D? I don't see any. Madison, if you do, please interrupt me. Okay? Let's go to D3. Now we've related in Essay 1, we related the work sample to Body of Knowledge Outline Section C, which is on the traditional management functions. In our second question, we looked at leadership being much more focused. I'll tell you why the commission did that. So many essays in the past on executive skills portfolio just said, what kind of a leader I am. That was too broad. That we needed to be focused. What kind of a leader were you in this project that you're using as your work sample? We took a look at that then, and that's Body of Knowledge Outline D. Now Essay 3 relates your work sample to the Body of Knowledge Outline Section B, the vision and values of community action. So you're not just managing a program to benefit consumers, though you're doing that. You're not just showing your leadership skills in doing that, but you're forwarding the vision and values of community action in your agency or in your community. So let's see what you're expected to address in essay question number 3. Oh, excuse me, let's stay with that. I'm sorry, let's go back to it. You are expected to show that you understand and have used the vision and values of community action. Well, how are you going to show that you understand and used it? Well, you look at what the Body of Knowledge Outline says about vision and values of community action. Now, I hope you can see that fine print on your screen. If you can't, all you have to do is pull up your copy of the Body of Knowledge Outline, or you will see this cross-reference check sheet that is photocopied, that is copied here on this slide, which is all of the 22 qualities in the vision and values of community action. That's everything that appears on that section of the Body of Knowledge Outline. Well, in other questions, you were asked to relate to the Body of Knowledge Outline and reference with a page on your work sample that relates to your choice. Here, you actually are given this cross-reference check sheet, and you're expected to put the page numbers from your work sample that relate to that part of the Body of Knowledge Outline on this check sheet. You will see this when you open up the guide for developing an executive skills portfolio on the Ccap page of the partnership's website. You'll see this check sheet, which you must submit with your portfolio and enter in the pages of your work sample that it relates to. If you fail to use that check sheet, you will lose all points on this essay. You will get none of them. But that's very clear in the instructions. Let's take a look at this page on the check sheet. Okay. There's 22 of them. There's no way you're going to be able to justify checking all 22. But we've had candidates do that and mark pages for it. You can't do that. Your essay is not going to give you an opportunity to justify all of that. So you really need to choose the ones that you can make a good argument for. I just did a sample here of maybe what that community relations officer who is doing a work sample based on that project assigned to her for helping to build a better advocacy network for the low-income community, being more inclusive. And then I looked at that and said, yes, I'm looking at values and beliefs. Number 8, community action identifies and addresses the causes of poverty. I had a team that really pulled together. In my leadership, I made sure that we took, in that function of a leader, we assessed causes and goals. And we saw in that we identified and addressed the cause of poverty. It was a lot of work in that committee. And in fact, it shows on page 7 and 12 and 22 of my work sample. So I can justify that one. Anti-poverty initiatives must be related to assess community needs. Yes, that group did that. I can make a good argument about that. Yes, community action is the voice of the poor and uses a full range of public relations. Are you kidding? A full range of public relations techniques? That's my job. That's exactly what we did. And you can find that fully described in page 8. I think I can also make an argument about mobilization of resources internally in the agency and externally in 19. That's what that whole committee we pulled together did. There was part of the team in the agency and part of those community action leaders in the community. And boy, did we involve grassroots activities with all the interviews we did, with all those public announcements, with all the things where we went out to those churches in the community and said, make your voices be heard. Oh, there's so many ways that we did that. I think we can make a justification for those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can write that up. Way too many candidates make the mistake of thinking if they make more and check more and more boxes, they're going to get the possibility of more points. Not true. Check the ones you can make a good argument for. That's the ones you need to be able to say that your evaluators say, oh, yes. If you look at the work sample of the pages that she referenced, she does say that. And her essay points out how, yes, we really had a robust activity in the community of involving grassroots activities. Okay? Okay. That's essay number 3. I'm going to look at some questions. And one that came in said, does a project's result need to be successful? Is considered a project if it's only partially successful? That depends on what you define as success. If you define success only in terms of ultimacy and final results, yeah, that's not it. But if you define success as loosening the way, I can think of, Rise Up. Who wrote that song? Her name's not coming to me. She said, I rise up. You knock me down. I get up. If I get up, I can take the first step. If I can take the first step, I can take the second step. So I'm showing success by the trajectory. I got a community that was sitting down to stand up. We haven't got to our goal yet, but we've established a system that if we keep energizing it, it's going to get there. That's an argument to say success is our trajectory. That's a different way of talking about success, all right? I just made up one way of approaching it. But you've got to think in terms of quality efforts, engaging a community. You've got to think about how you, as an individual, influenced a group of individuals toward agreed upon common goal, and what kind of management skills you pull together in that particular situation to head towards that goal, the level of commitment to getting there, and document that. I hope that responds to your question. Okay. Let's take a look The fourth essay. Demonstrate how your work sample contributes to your agency's attainment or enhancement of one of the partnership standards of excellence. Yet again, do not choose 3 or 4. There are 35 standards in the partnership standards of excellence under 7 categories. You are asked to choose 1. Do not think if you choose 3 or 4, you have a better chance of getting a better score. You won't. Choose 1 and make a robust statement about that 1 out of the 35. Now, how it has either enhanced the partnership, and excellence at my agency, or it has the capacity to contribute to that standard. Let's just go back to and think about advocacy issues. I believe are in category 1. I think it's either the 5th or 6th standard. I think it's the 6th standard of excellence. I can make a pretty robust argument about that if our agency really seriously takes a transformation into a kind of inclusiveness that recognizes we need to address issues of racial equity in our community in a way that has not been done in our community, that's going to make us a more excellent agency. I can make that argument. All right? That's where we're going. Choose 1 and make a good argument out of those 35 for that 1. It's not going to improve your score by choosing more than 1. Okay, now let's talk about guidance for your submission. Before doing that, I don't see any more questions about my whole soapbox conversation with you. Okay, then let's go to the guidance about how to do this. I'm going to repeat. Make sure that you refer to specific pages in your work sample when you're writing an essay. Your failure to do that will mean you lose points. And in particular, there's a mandatory worksheet that you have to use that we just looked at for essay number 3 on vision and values. The next 2 points are about, any of you done grant writing, you know, the whole issue of fatal flaws. If the evaluator cannot determine what you did in that work sample by what you said in the introductory materials, look at that again, it's a fatal flaw. Your work sample will be disqualified. You'll get no points. If the evaluator cannot determine that the work was done within the required 3-year time limit, that means that that work sample that you submit, the work you were doing on that, was not completed more than 3 years before you became a candidate. If that evaluator can't determine that time frame by what you tell in your introductory materials, fatal flaw, you got no points on that VSP. It's been disqualified. Crucial. Next point, the format. First, the description. Let me see. I don't think I skipped a page. Let me double check. Yes. The format. First, the descriptive materials. What was this work about? What was the goal? Your role in the work, that fatal flaw, don't make it, including when it happened. If there's a budget, and any document that might be reports or results, if there are any. Then the document that describes the work. Now, when it says the document describes the work, that could be so many different things. It could be a grant submission that you did. It could be a documentation of the whole of the program in a report that you made and a PowerPoint slide presentation, which, by the way, don't send a PowerPoint. Convert it to a PDF. If you're going to do a PowerPoint, do not do that. Make it a PDF. So it might be a PDF that describes the work that you did. People have asked before, can it be some kind of a video? Yes, but make sure that that video, have a system to be able to refer to frames in the video when you do your essay. You really have to be clever about using a video so that your essays can refer to it correctly. Advise not doing that if, unless you really feel that it needs to be done. Okay. That document, though, can be all kinds of things. And then finally, the essays, including that required worksheet. Let's talk in more detail about also how you submit this. Assemble all the documents and scan into one PDF. One PDF, if at all possible. Some candidates in the past have done multiple. We've gotten up to 12 and 15 and more PDFs attached to an email. You risk the possibility of something being misfiled. And they have to go to your team of evaluators. That's why we ask you, please, make it one PDF. You might have to make it 2 or maybe 3 at the most, maybe because your work sample is heavily laden with graphics. Understand, if that's the case, and you can't then send it, as it says in number 2, as an attachment to Mitzi Hubbard at CommunityActionPartnership.com. If you can't send it in an attachment, then you can place it in Dropbox or Google Docs and then send the link to access that Dropbox or Google Docs to the same address if it can't be condensed into 15 gigs or less. Now, all ESP submissions will be acknowledged as received. There's a reason for that. Sometimes ESP submissions, we had a random letter wrong in an email address that got somehow communicated, where some ESPs a couple of years ago went to a wrong email address and were never received. That's why we made this as a kind of a fail-safe, because if you don't get an acknowledgement of your email submission within 3 days of submitting it, send an email inquiry to that same address, to Mitzi Hubbard at Community Action Partnership, at CommunityActionPartnership.com, to say, I submitted my project but haven't seen an acknowledgement of it yet, so we can research what happened to it. I will be assisting Mitzi in that process this first year and go around. Okay? That's how to submit it. Now, I mentioned the ESP guidelines that we just basically, this presentation is based on those guidelines, and the presentation refers you back to those guidelines. So if you go to CommunityActionPartnership.com/Ccap, you'll come to this drop-down menu that you see where it says Closer Look, Ccap Documents. And if you click on Ccap in that drop-down menu and you click on Executive Skills Portfolio, you will see this. And here it says download the complete ESP guide. You see the word here is the link for more details. It notes the deadline, February 17th, 2021. This is where you access the current 2021 ESP guide. Any guide other than that one on the partnership website is null and void. This is the one you have to use. Okay? Now, for assistance along the way, you will find the Ccap orientation webinar archived and accessible, by the way, on that same list. You will find the opportunity to access the previous webinars archived, and this one will be, as with the examination webinar will be available on Tuesday, March 9th at the same time. So if you access these webinars, it gives you all the information you need on orientation to Ccap as a whole, the candidate data form, the executive skill portfolio. So if you need to be reminded, go right back to these webinars, review them, or go back to the page, okay? And now I want to look at the questions on the chat box. And the question is, when is the enrollment form and payment due? Well, the enrollment form, let me put it this way. Enrollment form can be accepted any time from this moment on, and payment any time from this moment on. But note that if you want to be considered a candidate doing your submissions in the program year 2021, with the possibility of qualifying to take the Ccap exam in June of 2021, understand that the first deadline that will smack you in the face is the third Wednesday of January, which I believe is the 20th. I'm not looking at a calendar, of January 2021. That means you must be enrolled as a candidate before that date. And you have to have paid for your candidacy by that date. So enrollment should be completed by then. Any enrollment that is received from the Thursday of the third week of February will be enrolling a candidate for the following year, not that year. So there's a point at which that CDF due date kind of controls the enrollment process. So be very conscious of that. Okay. Is there a candidacy guide this year? Yes, there is. There's a general candidacy guide on the same Ccap page, just as you see in the whole chat window, CreationPartnership.com/Ccap. Okay. Okay, some helpful reminders. Your candidacy lasts for 3 years. Some have to take a 43 years to both points. That's perfectly fine. A few people need to retake the exam, a second that if you need to. And if you qualify to take it and take it in 1 year and don't make it that 1 year, if you're still a candidate the next year, you can take it the next year. The program is designed to provide opportunities for persons of all kinds of backgrounds. All the forms you needed are on the website. Also, is a list of mentors who can help you through the process. And in fact, many of you have the option of participating in Ccap study groups. If not, if you want to email to Mitzi about identification with the study groups, she can let you know where they're happening, and we can connect you to the ones that admit persons from outside their state, if you're not in one of them. When the examination is being reviewed right now by the exam committee, being developed for 2021 right now through the exam committee. It will be finally approved by the exam committee by the end of December, and then during a study guide will be prepared and then published for the exam by January 31st. So that that exam study guide gives you all the resources you need for the 2021 exam. So that's further help to look ahead to the future. Okay, let me see if we have any more. the candidacy guide, I'm looking back at this question. The candidacy guide is not to the quotes, the whole of Ccap. That's if you look at the web page itself and read the brochures and read the descriptions and peruse the whole website and all the questions that you see to it. There's a candidacy guide to the candidate data form under the CDF section of the Ccap page. There's a guide to the executive skills portfolio, which we're talking about today that we looked at under ESP. And the guide to the examination is what I just mentioned will be published in January. Those are the three guides that are to the whole of Ccap. I repeat, the guide to the CDF is under CDF. So there's a CDF form and a guide for completing it. The webinar doubles that guide. There's a guide to the executive skills portfolio. This webinar doubles that guide. The exam guide is the study guide that will be published in January. They constitute a guide to everything about the submissions for Ccap. The whole website, if you read the whole website, looks at what Ccap is all about. I hope that answers the question. Question for you, all of you. Does Ccap belong at the end of your name? Well, if you find yourself as someone who is working at leadership, is truly in a position of executive level management, as you can see, that is identified in the candidate data form, and if you've been doing that for at least 2 years, if you have a commitment to community action, vision, and values, and willing to fill in the parts of your knowledge about community action that need to be filled in, then yes, it belongs at the end of your name. And we want to see you in that picture. We'll pray to God that we can have this thing actually happening this August in 2021 so that we can actually see all of you standing on that stage. The last time we could take that picture was in Chicago of 2019. What a wonderful event that is. All those newly recognized, they're not new community action leaders, they're newly recognized community action leaders. We want to see you in that group. If I don't see any other questions, we have time to sign off. It's 3 minutes to the end of the hour. I'm going to do that. Let me check with you. Madison, do you have any closing instructions for our viewers of this webinar? Or Javita?
No. We should be all set. Just to reiterate, the links for the CDF and ESP guides are on the Ccap page under that second tab there. I'm ready for candidacy. Now what?
Okay, then my thanks to everyone for your patience with me and listening to all of this. And I hope you will have a very successful candidacy. And you'll find support, a lot of support at the partnership to get you there. Best to you all. And good luck in these difficult and challenging times. Signing off.